Hello and welcome to yet another edition of ET Now Hangouts with me, Ankita Saxena. Well, I'm back with yet another exciting episode of meaningful conversations from young influencers, startup founders, latest trends and what's hot in the market. Well, my first guest is one of the Forbes top 100 digital content creators. Well, she's a CA by qualification and makes videos on Instagram to spread financial literacy, aiming to make everyone their own CA. Well, I'm in conversation with CA Twinkle Jain. Hi Twinkle, welcome to ET Now Hangout. So good to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So well, Twinkle, let's get started. Financial literacy, you talk about financial literacy. It is a life skill that perhaps everyone should know, but we are a show for the young and the restless, and you are a younger person. Tell us, how can Gen Next get started on the financial journey? How did you get started on your financial journey?
So the basic thing that Gen X I would suggest is, one thing that they should actually do is budgeting and then stick to it. Yeah. Because I see a lot of people who spend beyond their means, and I don't think that's the way to go, because once you're spending recklessly by maybe half the month and you're done with your salary, and how do you then you rely on debt, and then you keep piling up the debt, which is a blunder again. So it's better to budget and then stick to it. So for example, I had a friend when we were in college. She made a point that she budget her expenses. She knew what her necessities are, what her wants are, and because we are young, we go out with friends. So she tried to stick to her budget, and therefore she didn't go out on weekdays and spend the budgeted amount during the weekends only. So because, for example, if she was splurging out all her salary or whatever she was making during that time, she would be done with her salary in like 10 days of the month. So I think the one thing that Gen Next should really keep in mind is budget and stick to it.
Right. So you have to prioritize what you want more, right? Yes. That's what you mean by budgeting. Okay. So you mentioned budgeting. So what should be the ideal amount of save versus spend? Of course, for everyone, the salary is different and their needs and goals are different. But for a younger person who started out, started making, say, 25,000 a month, what should be the percentage of save versus spend?
So, of course, like you mentioned, it varies from person to person, but there's this rule, thumb rule, where 50-30-20, where 50% of your income should go towards your necessities, the 20%, next 20% should go towards your savings, and the rest 30% towards the desires or wants, that is maybe luxury spending or entertainment expenses. So 50-30-20 goes like that. So like I mentioned, that there should be a percentage. My 50-30-20 can be your 60-40,
whatever the number is.
Yeah, whatever the number is. So therefore, one should stick to the percentages.
Depending on your income and your lifestyle. The ratio should
depending on your income, one should not spend beyond their means, and they should allocate their income in these buckets: the wants and the necessities and the savings. And one should try that they save at least some percentage of their salary, because of course YOLO, but then if you're not saving enough, you may end up being broke in some years. So just make these buckets, allocate your income according to these percentages that you have set according to your lifestyle.
Right, very interesting, Twinkle. Set a ratio according to your income and your needs, and of course set buckets, as you mentioned, of save versus spends versus whatever your essential needs are. But speaking of investment and speaking of buckets, what are the asset classes that you prefer yourself and you would recommend to a younger audience if you had to make buckets, and the percentage of allocation that you could look at as someone who's young and maybe can take more risks than someone who's older?
So just like expenses, the investments also depends from person to person and is very subjective. Yeah. So it depends on various things, like maybe the goals of the person.
Of course.
Or maybe risk-taking capabilities. So for example, I'm a very risk-averse person. I try to go safe, and therefore most of my investments are in gold and FD, safer avenues. But for a person who likes to take the risk, they can invest in equity, mutual funds. So depending, and also the duration of the investment. So for example, I know for a fact that if I'm going to study abroad next year, then I won't invest in something which is for a longer term, maybe a provident fund or any long-term duration investment. I would invest in something that returns my money next year itself when I need it for my education. Or if I'm maybe planning a vacation in 3 months, then I'll maybe choose a 3-month liquid fund where my investments are back to me in 3 months and gives me returns. So I won't want to lock it in. So depending on the duration also, one should choose the asset class they are preferring and what their goals are. For example, I want to save for my maybe children, which is like way ahead. So those are my goals, which may not be your goals. So your asset class, your investments will be different than mine. But of course, I would suggest that one should not invest in the asset classes which they don't understand, maybe like cryptocurrency. So, or anything. If I understand gold, I would invest in gold. If I I don't have much percentage of my investments in cryptocurrency because I really don't
Get the asset class.
Yeah. So one should invest according to their goals and their requirements, and not just because someone else is doing it, and they should not copy paste other person's patterns.
Twinkle, you rightly mentioned the fact that you know, for everyone the goal is different. Their goals, their timelines are different. That's correct. But as a younger person, do you not think that you have the luxury of time, which maybe an older person may not have? So you also can be, you know, take more risks as opposed to a person who is probably well into their 30s or 40s or married. Obviously, they cannot take as many risks as a younger person can. Then is it not more lucrative to invest in equities through mutual funds or SIPs then?
Rightly said, Ankita. So for a person like me or similar age, we don't have as much responsibilities. But for a person like my father, he has to take responsibility of the whole family. I'm just responsible for my own self, and therefore I can maybe invest 100% of my equity, and I won't be accountable to anyone, even if I lose it. But my father can't do the same thing. So being younger, of course, comes with the advantage, right? Interestingly, there's a thumb rule for the same thing, how much percentage of your investment should go in equity, which goes as 100 minus your age. So if I'm 25 years old, so 100 minus 25 is 75%, right? So I can invest 75% of my investments in equity and the rest in the fixed or maybe safer options. Yes, safer options. So of course, this also depends from person to person, because some people, though they are younger, they may have other loans that they have to like repay or other responsibilities. So that also is very subjective.
But that's like a ballpark of how much you can put into the equities and, you know, mutual
So it's also
funds.
like proportional, right? So as you grow older 100 minus, so the percentage comes down.
Right. Also, okay, so these were the things that probably Gen X should be doing, but there are also big blunders that we are making, you know, in our investment journeys. What, according to you, are the big blunders that Gen X is making while investing?
I think the biggest blunders that Gen X is making is spending beyond their means. One, because I've seen a lot of people who spend without taking out savings first.
Yeah.
I think one should save first and then spend. For example, if you know that your necessities or your expenses are going to be like 90% of your income, then save at least 10% beforehand and then spend the 90%, rest of the 90%. So for example, I had this friend who was spending so recklessly. If his salary was 50,000, he was spending like 60,000 per month. The rest of the 10,000 came from his credit card, and that 10,000 he converted in EMI. So he was just it was like a road. Yeah. So one should spend mindfully, save first, and then spend your salary or income.
Right. Very interesting. So tell me, what is your take on EMIs and EMI as a scheme of luring people into things? Because I know the minute you see something is expensive, you may not, you might become a little averse, but the minute you see that it has an EMI, zero interest EMI, you are instantly drawn towards it, and you might end up purchasing something which is way beyond your means because it has an EMI scheme. What is your take on EMIs and Gen Next?
So of course, EMIs companies introduce EMI option to lure people in. Yes. For instance, I know if I can't afford a 1 lakh rupee phone, 1 lakh may look unaffordable for me. But if I say maybe you can pay 10,000 every month, then I'll be like, oh my God, I can afford an iPhone in 10,000 rupees. I just have to pay 10,000 rupees, which is like some percentage of my salary. So I think that becomes a luring factor for the companies. But people don't see that with 10,000 it's the same amount, right? It's not what you should go for. Maybe save first, maybe don't go for EMI. What you do is put that 10,000 into a savings or an investment, short term investment, and then when you're able to save 1 lakh rupees, and then you go for that phone, rather than going for the EMI option, because of course you're getting interest also, but there you're paying the interest for converting that EMI option. So I think EMI, I would say I'm that person who jitni chadar utna pair phailane chahiye, but not everyone is the same. So they go beyond their means, which is a big mistake. So I don't believe in EMI options.
Okay. Also, one of the biggest blunders I feel that Gen Next makes is not understanding their salary structure. So, Twinkle, tell us, how can we decipher, how can we, understand our salary slips, salary structure better? And because, CTC versus what you're getting in hand, how do you differentiate between that, and how can one understand the salary slip better?
So it's a very interesting question, Ankita. A lot of people don't really understand the salary slip and therefore miss out on the tax savings, right, because they don't know what their salary structure is, and they can actually ask their HR to modify their salary according to their requirements, which can help them tax saving. So I just break down the salary slip for you. So basically there's basic salary, and then there are allowances like HRA, leave travel allowances, dearness allowances, and that makes the gross salary.
Right.
And from that gross salary, there are various deductions like professional tax, provident fund, and group life insurance premium that the company pays. So that is also deducted, and that comes to net salary. And then there's employer's provident fund that the employer contributes. So this is basically the salary structure. But sometimes people also confuse CTC versus in hand. Right. For example, if I'm hiring some person, I may promise 20 lakhs, but in hand I'm getting only 10 lakhs. Why? Because gratuity, things like gratuity, professional tax, and other taxes are deducted from those salaries. So from that 20 lakhs, and therefore you're just ending up with 10 lakhs in your hand. Right. So one should understand that there's a difference between CTC and the salary in hand, and act accordingly. They should ask their HR. Of course, not every company allows it, but if they do, they should inculcate things like if someone is traveling a lot, then they should ask their HR to maybe add a leave travel allowance to their salary, maybe break down their salary in a way that it has leave travel allowance. But for a person like me who's not traveling as much, LTA would be not as benefited. But HRA would be more beneficial for me. So they should understand what benefits them and accordingly break down their salary.
Twinkle, you have already told us how to get started with understanding our salary slip, our salary structure. So that part is sorted. Tell us, how do you get started on your journey towards achieving a better tax knowledge, or how do you get started with your taxes? What are the basics?
So firstly, I would say if you take charge of your own taxes, don't leave everything to CA blindly. I'm not suggesting do the whole thing on your own, because then you will be just ending up paying a lot of tax, but try to understand what's happening. And there are various benefits that government gives. There are like a lot of options like ELSS, NPS, and other ATC deductions. Sukanya Samriddhi Yojana. There are like various benefits that government gives, where if you're putting your money, you can take a tax benefit of it, right? And even if you're like repaying loan, education loan or home loan, you can take benefit of that amount also. So understand the benefits that the government is giving. And secondly, the most important thing is choose the right tax regime for yourself. There are two tax regimes, old tax regime and the new tax regime. At the start of the year itself, you should calculate according to your salary which tax regime is benefiting you, and accordingly choose it and give information to your HR that I'm opting for this tax regime. Because if you're not doing that, the HR will deduct tax according to themselves. And most importantly, one should plan their taxes from the start of the year and not wait till the end of the year. Because for example, if I'm waiting till end of the year, I haven't planned my taxes, I haven't done the investments accordingly. If for example, I'm investing in ELSS, but I'm doing it at end of the year, which is 1,50,000 rupees. But there's some emergency that comes in. maybe a house renovation or some
Yeah.
expense, I won't have that money to invest, right? So I'm like losing out on that benefit. And at end moment, there are times when they won't realize ki which tax regime to choose, or maybe other things that they won't, maybe HRA benefits, they'll lose out on a lot of benefits. So therefore it's recommended ki you start planning your taxes from start of the year and not wait till last minute.
Finally, Twinkle, the one thing that we all love doing, definitely not taxes, but one thing we all love doing is to travel. But traveling is expensive. But if someone, a younger person who wants to travel, say take a holiday every 6 months, because I think, we all like to travel, go out as often as possible. How can you travel every 6 months and still keep on track with our financial goals?
So of course everyone loves to travel, and if I know for a fact that I'll be traveling after 6 months, I should start saving for it right now, because the earlier you start, the better. You will know how much amount you'll be spending. And second thing would be have a dedicated bucket for it. Every month put a certain amount of your income into that bucket, and maybe invest that amount in a 6-month mutual fund or a liquid fund, and so that you're not spending that amount somewhere else, which not required. And there are a lot of co-branded credit cards, maybe like Access Vistara, which gives a benefit of free flights when you are spending a certain amount from that card. So opt for these co-branded credit cards, and then there are like various reward. You can also convert the reward points and get various benefits and deduct and reduce your flight prices. So one is that, and if you have time in hand, you will be able to plan your vacation in a way where you are able to save more money, and maybe choose different experiences, like maybe opt for a hostel, then a hotel. It'll be more fun and it'll be saving you money.
All right, we will keep all those points in mind whenever we are traveling. But on that note, thank you so much for joining us, Twinkle. It was a pleasure having you.
Inviting me, Ankita.
Well, with that, it's time for us to slip into a short break. You don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're tuned into ET Now Hangouts with me, Ankita Saxena. And it is that time of the show where we take you to what's trending. Now, well, from another passing trend to $1 billion market, clean beauty has turned the beauty industry on its head. Well, the growth of D2C in the country, coupled with a significant shift in consumer behavior and growing awareness for chemical-free products, has given a rise to disrupting startups in the clean beauty space, backed by some strong investor interest. Well, let's look at some of the numbers then. The industry is pegged at almost $1 billion in India, with over 300 homegrown clean beauty brands. Clean brands contribute to around 5 to 10% of the overall skincare and beauty business in the country, while the global clean beauty industry is projected to reach close to $54 billion by 2027, as per data by Statista. And well, so I've decided to speak to the founders of one such clean beauty brand, Beauty by Bee, Queenie Singh, to understand the opportunities in the clean beauty market. Welcome, Queenie. Welcome to ET Now Hangouts. So good to have you on the show. Well, Queenie, a few years back, the words like organic, vegan, clean beauty, they were all passing fads, but now it's become the mainstay of the beauty industry. Tell us about your brand, Beauty with Bee, your journey, and what got you started.
So, beauty has always been part of my life, ever since I was a young girl. And, it was even before I met Dr. Dinyar, that I was always experimenting to see what there is in this platform of, what the world has to offer in terms of beauty and skincare and transformation of skin. And then I chanced upon meeting him in 20 years ago, almost 18, 19 years ago, where, I used to go to him for facials, and he would talk a lot about ingredients and beauty, like products and what goes in and what helps the skin to be a certain way. So I said that let me do something in Delhi with him, because Bombay was already saturated. Everybody was going to him. And we did this quick journey with him and took him to Delhi. And that was the first time I got sort of involved in beauty from sort of a kind of a professional way, even though it was not a money-making thing at that point at all for me. But it did fantastic. And we continued that for about a year and a half. So I had my fingers in this all throughout till I finally got this product out.
Right. So, Queenie, tell us, what is the opportunity that you see for the clean beauty space and your brand in the Indian market?
So, as far as clean beauty is concerned, it's a concept maybe in terms of its definition new, but clean beauty has been in our country forever, because there's been all sorts of approaches towards beauty. There's been Ayurveda, there's been different home remedies, where India is very, very famous for. And I see it here because I live in London, and I see that how India is always synonymous with natural stuff. And clean is, however, another definition where we say that, we use ingredients which could be also chemicals, like hyaluronic acid is a typical example. But it's a safe, non-toxic, and an ingredient that actually helps to make your skin better. Clean is actually where you are completely transparent with the ingredients you're using in your product. And so that the consumer knows that this is what I'm applying on my skin. So clean is the way forward.
Queenie, COVID was a watershed moment for a lot of D2C beauty brands, which also led to the birth of many consumer brands. If you look at the numbers, in India now has some 300 homegrown clean beauty brands. How are you navigating through this competition, and what are the challenges of the Indian market for you?
To get knowledge across is a biggie. To make people understand the truth about skincare, to make them understand about clean beauty, to make them understand what routines are about. So information is most important, I feel. We are very big on it. We do pop-ups everywhere. And as much as I can get Dinya's dates to be in the pop-up, to get the information out about skincare, about knowledge about skincare. That is how I can differentiate myself. Although there is a lot of competition, and competition is great to understand where we are, I don't get frightened of competition at all.
Right. And finally, Queenie, what is the kind of investor interest that you're seeing so far? And give us a fair idea of how the clean beauty segment has really grown.
As far as I'm concerned, I have a great cap table, and people have, who are successful businessmen, have put, an investment into B, because they understand where we are and how we are taking this forward. And it's been great. I mean, people understand that there is scope in India for this kind of thing. We talk about going international and all that, but India has one of the biggest markets for skincare. It really does. And of course, we intend to go international next year.
All right, Queenie, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure to have you on the show. And well, with that, it's that time of the show where